Hello, Gen Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast.
All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
And along with our undying gratitude, you'll also be able to join our special patron-only Facebook group.
But the most exciting new perk is exclusive access to essays I'm writing from my upcoming memoir. And you guys can help me be editors.
New Patreon supporters will also get a shout-out on the podcast.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast and would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
Thank you all so much, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of the podcast. How are you, Julie?
Great.
I'm feeling well rested. You know, I spent the weekend out in Palm Springs, and I haven't been out in the desert in a long time. And it was so beautiful. I was worried. You know, I booked this trip months ago. And hoping like, oh, the weather will be nice or whatever. And the day before I left, they had a Haboob. Do you know what that is?
No. Haboob?
A Haboob. It's a dust storm.
Oh.
And they very rarely get them. But apparently it blocked out the sun and everything was covered in dust and sand and people could barely breathe.
Oh, that sounds disgusting.
I know. And I was
that sounds like
no.
Burning Man, which
Right.
I would never go to.
Which, yes, you would never find me at Burning Man.
You would never find.
Then I checked the air quality. You know, when you look at your phone app, the weather app on your phone, it says you what the air quality was. And it was 600, which is the worst it can get. It was red. And I thought, oh, no, this is going to be a terrible trip.
But
you know what? By the day I arrived, it had all cleared out. And everybody was still talking about it. But it was over.
The Haboob.
The Haboob.
The Haboob of 22. The 22 Haboob.
But the weather was beautiful, and I just literally did nothing but lay by the pool and float and relax.
Jelly.
And have cocktails and,
Did you stay at a hotel or an Airbnb?
It was a hotel. What's great about Palm Springs is they have all these very small 1950s style resorts.
Yeah. They're so cute.
They're old motels, but they've been fixed up, and they're all maybe 15 or 16 rooms surrounding a pool, and it's just very casual and love it. So
good.
That's
Did you take Buddy?
Did. No, we boarded him for 2 days, and I haven't done that in probably 6 years. So I was a little worried.
Go?
He came back with a different voice.
Was he hoarse?
He was hoarse, and his bark was high-pitched, which he doesn't have a high-pitched bark.
Well, he does when he's been doing nothing but barking for 48 hours.
I know. Poor thing.
I have that same thing with Bijou when I go for a couple of days.
Oh, my God,
and
it was
realize
shocking.
how awful it must be for my family.
It was like they gave me back a different dog. I mean, only he was fine. It was just, it made me laugh, I said, how did he do? Because they put them in the daycare with the other dogs all day, and then they board them in the crates at night. And they said, oh, he had a good time. And I looked at him, I'm like, Buddy never has a good time with other dogs.
Yeah, what's up with that?
He probably literally just stood by the door waiting for them to let him out again.
Oh,
he's just not social.
Yeah. So when was it Brooklyn? We went out of town. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But we had to put Brooklyn in a place that was like a playground. They had a pool and all these places for the dogs to run.
Right.
And there were cameras everywhere.
Yes.
So that you could log in and watch them.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Every time I logged in, I could not see her. Ever. And so when we went to pick her up, apparently she was too aggressive with the other dogs, so they had to separate her from him, and she was by herself the entire time.
Oh, Wow, poor thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to back up, a few days before we went away, I brought Buddy to a little daycare place, a different place, not where we were going to board him, that had cameras. And I went, I just left him there for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
While I had my carpets cleaned. And I watched him, or, every time I checked in, he was at the door, just like with his paws up on the door waiting. Like he did not care that the other dogs were around him. He was just wanted out.
Yes.
And but I'm kind of glad that the place I boarded him for the weekend didn't have cameras, because I feel like I would have been checking on him every moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably for the best. I don't think I could do that again.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying I wouldn't board Brooklyn again, but I don't want to watch.
No, I like the places that will send you a picture, because then you have like a little frozen moment in time knowing that they're
smiling.
okay. Yes, that they're okay. Yeah. But like, I don't want to see him like begging to be let out. And then it would just ruin my trip.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. Oh, God.
But anyway, this is not a dog podcast, although I really wouldn't mind if it was.
I hear you. I hear you on that.
It's about DNA. So tell me, what do you want to talk about with DNA today, Julie?
Let's talk. Hey, do you watch The Amazing Race?
I do not.
Well, there happens to be a set of identical twins on The Amazing Race right now, and they have an amazing story that is right up our alley.
Oh, that's neat.
So there are these twins named Emily Bushnell and Molly Stennert. They're 36-year-old women, and they're identical. What's really unusual about them is that they did not know about each other until, I think, earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were separated at birth.
It's so weird when like identical twins are separated and given out to different homes.
Why would anybody do that? That seems excessively cruel.
It does. And also, I would think that like there are families that would love to adopt twins. I don't know.
What is it? Absolutely there are. So they were born in South Korea in 1985, and they were sent to separate foster homes as infants. First mistake. Before being adopted by two American families, unaware that they each had a sibling. One went to Yardley, Pennsylvania. The other went to Winter Park, Florida. Then they both knew that they were adopted. They were both raised by Jewish families, which I think is interesting. So Bushnell's oldest child, Izzy, was 10, and she wanted to know about her biological relatives. We forget about that. We forget that our offspring are also part of this equation, because they are direct descendants of our direct ancestors as well. So she took a 23andMe test because she wanted to learn more about her mom's biological relatives. Then Sinnert, in March, she took a test because she was having health issues, and she realized, and 23andMe, especially if it's for health, people tend to lean into 23andMe.
And why is that?
Because you get health reports and stuff from 23andMe, and you don't.
Oh, and Ancestry doesn't do that. Okay.
They do. You can pay extra for something like that. I've never even looked into it at Ancestry, but that's what 23andMe is known for.
I see.
Yes. So after Sinnert sent her test in, she got an email from 23andMe predicting that she had a daughter.
Huh.
She and her husband, Stephen Ellis, have no children. So at first she thought it was a scam.
Right, right.
And Bushnell, who manages her daughter's account, looked up Sinnert online and found a recent video of her at a work event. It was like watching myself, she recalls. I was in complete shock. The pair soon realized they were identical twins after comparing photos and birthdays, but they didn't want their first meeting to be over video, so they didn't FaceTime or anything, and they met on their 36th birthday in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Wow.
Yep, and have been getting acquainted ever since, and now they are contestants on The Amazing Race.
Oh, that's so cool. Is it such, how do I put this? The way that they would match you with DNA, that they said she had a daughter, but it was actually her twin sister. Does that track? I mean,
yes, because they're identical twins.
I see.
And so it would assume that it is her daughter. The only way a child would match an adult that isn't their parent would be if their parent had an identical twin.
Wow.
If they had a fraternal twin, they would match as an aunt.
Oh, wow.
Or a niece. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. So have you been watching The Amazing Race?
No, I have not. No.
You just follow the news about it.
I follow anything that has a DNA thing. I don't watch The Amazing Race. My husband loves The Amazing Race. It makes me very anxious.
I've not seen one episode of any season.
It's one of the better competition reality shows. Let's just put it that way. I don't like competition reality shows in general. To me, it is so stressful. Any kind of a race is stressful to me. I don't want to race anybody.
I'd be interested to tune in to the episodes with the twins to find out how they tell that story and then how the twins are together, considering that they had not been raised together for the first 36 years of their life. That is a good
reason to watch it, certainly. And they're on every episode. If you've never watched it, but basically each episode is a leg of the race.
Right.
And so it follows all of the contestants and their pairs, their, couples or siblings or friends or what have you.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just tune in on YouTube and find the highlights of just their part so I can find out.
Or maybe watch the first episode of this season and maybe you'll get hooked.
Maybe. You know what?
I've heard that happens,
Maybe that's why I probably shouldn't watch it because I don't need any more distractions in my life. Oh my God. It's like going down the rabbit hole, right? When you turn on YouTube or something and you just can't stop.
God. Oh, speaking of rabbit holes, I just got a VPN. Do you know what that is?
I do. I don't know how they work, but I understand that it is a virtual private network.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that because I could not for the life of me break that down.
I have VPL.
What's that?
Visual panty line. Only when my pants are too tight.
I'm happy to know you're wearing panties. Anyway, I got a VPN, and because I wanted to watch Australian television.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, and there's something every few months I get this wild hair that I want to explore my home country. Yeah. And I like to watch classic stuff. There's a lot of great contemporary television and film work that happens in Australia now that we don't see here. And also even just the news. I found something on ABC, which is the Australian Broadcasting Network company, or commission or something. That was what was public television when I was a kid.
It was like the PBS or something.
Yes, exactly. It was like PBS. But so I've been watching Countdown, which was, for lack of a better explanation, like what was the music show in the 70s and 80s?
American Bandstand?
Yes, okay. It was like American Bandstand, kind of. It was a music show in Australia that I grew up on.
All right.
And so they have these hour-long flashback episodes from the year 1975 to 1983, something like that. And
that's
77 through 1980 were the years that I was very invested in it. And so I've been watching those and just taking myself back to that place.
Oh, that's fun. I love that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But there's also, on that network, there's also a current show called Planet America.
Okay.
And it's a couple of guys talking about what's happening in politics in the U.S.
From an Australian perspective.
Oh,
that would be interesting, huh?
Fascinating. I'm always wondering. I mean, I talk to, obviously, I have Australian relatives and friends, and I'm like, what does it look like from there?
Yeah. Does it look as crazy as it does from here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, more so. More so.
Wow.
It's and it reminds me of how embarrassing it is for us as Americans right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my story.
Well, I think we should take a little break.
I think we shall.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
So I have been, I've been making an effort to step back from my activism, my public activism, specifically on social media, TikTok, and what have you, regarding adoption trauma and adoption reform and stuff like that.
Okay.
Mainly because it's just, it kind of does your brain in after a while and affects your life and your mental health. So I've been trying to focus my TikTok and social media more on genetic genealogy and finding family and helping people in that respect.
Yes.
But just when you're out, they suck you back in. And
Thank you, Miss Corleone.
you're welcome. You're welcome. So somebody drew my attention to this website called I Am That Kid. Adoption is an option. And so it's this just website that
Okay.
I'm not exactly... Okay, so you go to this website, adoption is an option, I am that kid. And so I click on mission, and everything is more video than written word. So you have to watch these people tell their stories. And what it is... Well, the mission is actually somebody there's nothing I can read. So the gentleman who started this website is John Knox, who is an adoptee and a founder of a Fortune 100 company, I guess. So considers himself pretty successful. And he has partnered, or he features several Olympic athletes who were adoptees.
Okay.
To talk about how great adoption was for them. And look, they're, blah, blah, blah. And so they've got Kitty Conrad and Peter Carruthers, Greg Louganis, and Scott Hamilton all talking about how wonderful adoption was.
The only one I know is Greg Louganis.
You don't know Kitty and Peter Carruthers?
I don't. And I only know Greg Louganis because he used to work out and practices diving at USC when I was a student there, and I would see him practicing.
Sure you did.
Yeah.
And well, Kitty and Peter Carruthers were Olympic figure skaters, and so was Scott Hamilton. So, these are all Olympic gold medalists, and
and they were all adopted. I didn't know Greg Louganis was adopted.
There you go. They are, and they all have interviews talking about their parents. Like there's a lot of language like chosen and grateful and just stuff that'll really trigger an adult adoptee that isn't an Olympic gold medalist. And the first thing it smacks of to me is the pro-adoption, and I don't say that as if I am anti-adoption, because I'm not. But the adoption narrative is always, adoption is beautiful. Look at, you're giving people second chances. You're saving people from horrible situations, which none of that is true. The bottom line is there is no guarantee of a better life with adoption, just a different life. But it's also setting up the standard of a successful adoption to be founding a Fortune 100 company or being an Olympic gold medalist. You know what I'm saying? So that is the standard of success of an adoptee. And it bites. It really kind of chaps my hide, if you will. And so I decided to look up other celebrities who are adoptees and speak about it that don't skew it towards adoption is beautiful.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate for a moment and just say that perhaps to these Olympians that they interviewed, I mean, that's how they feel about it. Like if they use the language that may trigger you, but if they do feel, I don't know, chosen or lucky or whatever it may be, whatever those words are, I mean, that's their opinion and it's perfectly valid for them.
It is, but it's harmful. Well, okay, I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
In just a second. Let's talk about Keegan Michael Key.
Okay.
he was on Running Wild with Bear Grylls last year, and he opened up about his adoption experience and how it shaped him into the person he is today. And he got deep about his fear of being abandoned again. I have a people-pleasing issue, he told Grylls, who was attempting to help him overcome his fear of spiders in the Icelandic lava fields. That would not have worked for me, by the way. I have a great fear of spiders.
Of lava fields?
Right. Lava fields that have spiders. Good God. He said, I do think it comes from being adopted. I think people who are adopted have this kind of situation where you go, I'm going to do everything everybody else tells me because I don't want to get abandoned again. He grew up knowing he was adopted. It was something my parents had always told me, just like me. I think they were trying to make me feel special, like, hey, we picked you and you're special. Sometimes in the reinforcement of that, what happens is you're just telling me I'm different. And there's two ways to look at different. Different is either I'm different and I'm special, or I'm different and I'm worse than everybody else. So I do believe that's where that comes from, in a sense of wanting to please. He went on about that. I'm going to go to another Olympic figure skater, Randy Gardner, as in Ty Babylon. You have to remember Ty and Randy.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, they're all familiar. I just never really followed that stuff.
Yeah.
So when it was
I'm
happening,
shocked,
I'm sure I knew who they were.
Yes.
But,
yes.
you know, unless they were doing it on a Broadway stage, then I don't really know.
So Randy Gardner, in his book, he wrote in 2013 called I'm Who? There's a chapter where he talked about that, and he said an important truth that I discovered at age 40, that I'd been adopted as a baby, and that my parents had lied to me about it. So he was a late discovery adoptee, which is even worse.
Yes.
My discovery that I'd been adopted coincided with the realization that almost everyone in my family knew about my adoption, including my brother Gordy. The shock was overwhelming, and I found myself feeling as if I didn't belong anywhere. So a full-grown adult will feel that. Just as
that's
a child
such a betrayal, right? Like that is such a betrayal, knowing that all these people kept a secret from you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I felt adrift after having been so tightly anchored to my family. I struggled to process how the family that I'd loved and trusted for so much of my life could have lied to me for so many years. I questioned the trust I'd put in Mom, Dad, and my brother. I began to wonder what other secrets they'd been keeping from me. I didn't feel as if I could trust them anymore. They were like strangers that I didn't know. I felt unsafe. I began to do some research into the adoption and decided to take the first steps to find out the identity of my birth mother. Moments after I'd actually put the paper through the fax machine, this was a while ago, somebody called me back. Your birth certificate has been altered, she said. My heart sank. According to my consultant, so he hired a consultant. Altered birth certificates was fairly typical back around the time I was born. So it sounds like he didn't have a legal adoption if he had an altered birth certificate. Normally, American adoptees get an entirely new birth certificate,
right?
Not an altered one.
Oh, I see. Not altered.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, so you can read about that in his book.
Yeah.
But the thing that the last little paragraph was, when I found out about adoption, my initial feelings were that of loneliness and uncertainty. I developed a lack of trust in the people I spent my life believing, my mom, dad, and Gordy. I questioned their truthfulness. I wondered what else they'd told me throughout my life that also wasn't true. I looked down at my hand. The freckle I shared with my mom had almost faded away. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what I take from this is that trying to paint adoptees with one brush is folly. You know, in other words, just like any kind of group, you can't say they're all this, you know.
Right.
All
you are
gay
absolutely
people,
correct.
all women, all, you know, black people, all,
right.
you know, anything, all disabled people, whatever it may be, whatever group, that they may share a trait, but they are all going to have different personalities and different ways of looking at things.
Correct. So let's reconcile that with this article.
Okay.
From Intercountry Adoptee Voices, The Cycle of Harm in Celebrity Adoptions. Adoption is not heroism. It does not fight poverty, disease, nor the root causes of inequality. And this is primarily about celebrities adopting children. Okay? And we hear about it all the time, about what, you know, and celebrities are really the face of the pro-adoption community.
Okay.
And which is damaging, I believe. Celebrity adoption doesn't give adoptees a much-needed voice. Rather, it silences them, trapping adoptees in a pernicious web of gratitude in which life with their rich, famous, and predominantly white culture is normalized as better than the one they'd have had with their implied inferior families. Celebrity adoption harms all adoptees. They are the most highly publicized way in which most people come into contact with adoption and yet are least likely to highlight the voice of adoptees. Celebrity adoptions come with a literal team of agents, publicity experts, legal minds, and brand managers whose job, in part, will be to keep any dissenting adoptee voices about their famous families out of the media. In the everyday life of an adoptee minus celebrity, the media is highly effective in idolizing the role of gratitude towards adoptive parents. So much so that adoptees speaking out on social media come with a high risk of trolling and death wishes. Imagine the extra risks and isolation for a celebrity posted child of adoption. Celebrity adoptions exacerbate a climate of silence and create an inadvertent marketing campaign for child trafficking. The outcome of showcasing false saviorism in adoption is to make adoption fashionable and highly desirable to the upper and middle classes and wannabe saviors. To make intercountry adoption fashionable, the anonymizing family history, with anonymizing family history at its center, this creates a commercial market for baby farms, coercion, and kidnapping, and provides a kind of diplomatic immunity and witness protection for all agencies and families under the magic umbrella of adoption.
I hear you, and I see what you're saying, but I mean, what we were talking about were adoptees, not necessarily of celebrities. In other words, these are celebrities themselves we're talking about who are adoptees. These are Olympic athletes. They are not the parents who are the celebrities adopting their children we're talking about. Yeah. So I see the correlation you're making, but it's kind of a little apples and oranges in this comparison.
Well, in general, the only two adoptees I've found that have said, celebrity adoptees that I can find in the media were those two. I Googled famous celebrity adoptees, and even if this article was not written by them, it's about them, and it always highlights, I feel special. These people saved me, blah, blah, blah. And the whole point of it is that website is, once again, drumming up business for the multi-billion-dollar private infant adoption industry. And
the website you talked about, I Am That Kid or whatever, is what you're talking about.
Yes, I'm going back to that website. It partners with a couple other websites. One is for biological mothers and ways to coerce them into giving up their children. And
so what you're saying is that this has a specific bent. And it's not trying to be an all-encompassing, like telling the adoptee story from different points of view, like somebody who's very grateful and happy versus somebody who...
There is they refuse. I mean, here's the thing. So I went to GoDaddy and I looked up, I Am Also That Kid. And I Am That Kid Too. Like, if those websites were available, and they were, and I almost bought one of them. And that would be a pretty... that's pretty trolly of me.
It is a little trolly, but it's kind of I kind of like it.
I do too. And part of me is, and I didn't push buy, mainly because I don't know if my mental health is in a place for me to do that right now. But I'm very, very passionate about having adoptee voices be in the conversation. Don't even have to be the loudest voices. Just be in the conversation, and we're not.
I agree with you 100% on that, yes. I think we should take a break.
I think so, too.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Jeans with Julie Dixon-Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, it is time for part 3. And the finale of my conversation with Sandi S. Have I said Sandi S? Yeah.
I think you just said Sandi.
Okay. Of Sandi, who is an adult adoptee in Reunion. We've heard the first 2 parts of her story, and we're going to wrap it up now.
Sounds good. Let's listen in.
All right.
You know, it's interesting. People have said to me since then, for those of us who are adoptees who, you know, hop on a plane and go out to meet this family, that we know they're strangers to us, but we absolutely trust that we can fly out and stay at their house.
Yes. Yes. I did that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made no sense. It was back in the day when people could meet you at the gate.
Yes.
So when I flew out to see the sister who reunited all of us, she was living in Idaho at the time, and she met me at the gate. I, again, had my degree in journalism, so I had called the local TV station and said, do you think you can get somebody there to video this? It'll be a great human story.
Yeah.
You know? So they did. So that was on video.
All right.
And then like a month later, it was Christmas time, and right after Christmas, flew out to meet my brother and sister who were living out in Washington, and my uncle, my Wanda's brother, was there at the time. And as I came out and they hugged me, I heard my uncle say to my brother, oh my God, she looks just like, and it was my oldest sister that they mentioned, which is the first time in my life I heard someone say that, other than talking about my children.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, I adored them. I had an instant connection to my brother.
Oh, that's great.
Very, very close relationship with him. My older sister is much quieter than I am. Clearly, I'm not a quiet person.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that you are.
No. She's much quieter and loving and sweet. And I really enjoy her company. And my brother and his wife had twins a month before they found me. So they are my nieces who don't remember a time when I wasn't their aunt.
Oh.
Yeah. It was very sweet, very special to me.
Yeah.
Then I told my parents, my adopted parents, and my mom was very happy for me. She thought it was wonderful. She immediately, of course, wanted to have something to do with that family, which I didn't really feel comfortable with. You know, she wanted to be able to call them and meet them and talk to them. And I'm like, I just need you to back off.
Yeah.
That was really hard. And I remember taking my daughter out to meet my brother and sister, I think a year after we'd been reunited. And she said, I'm not going to call them aunt and uncle. And I said, no, of course not. You don't have to. They don't expect that. And after about 2 days, she said to me, you know, they really feel like my aunt and uncle.
Aww.
And that was that. So because of that relationship, my sister's daughter was about a year and a half younger than my daughter, and they became very close. And when my niece, got married, she asked my daughter to stand up in the wedding.
Oh.
And I was so excited. Oh, of course I'm going to be there. I can't wait. And the sister who reunited all of us said, are you crazy? I said, what do you mean? She says, what are you going to that wedding for? I said, well, why wouldn't I go? You know, my daughter's going to be in it. She said, think of who else is going to be there.
The mother.
Yeah.
And you can't.
And she was furious. She never wanted them to tell anyone who I was. They were to say I was their sister from their father's side.
Oh.
This was nothing. She was furious, and I was petrified. And my daughter said, you are not backing out. I'm not going to meet her by myself.
Whoa.
So we went out there. I got there about a week ahead to help my sister with wedding preps and things. And she said, you know, Mom has decided she's not coming.
Oh.
And I said, oh, okay. And I had already told my niece, you know, I don't have to come to the wedding. She was your grandma before I was your aunt. Right. She needs to be there. And she said, no, I love you both. If she doesn't want to come, that's on her.
Yep.
Wow. So God bless her.
Yeah.
I went to the wedding and was certain she was not coming. And I was helping in the back with getting things ready. And someone came in and said, where are the flowers for the grandmothers? And I said, oh, no, the groom's grandmother already has her flowers. Oh, no, the bride's grandma is here.
Oh, my gosh.
What? And so I'm like, this is my chance. I get to see her. I get to see what she looks like.
You still haven't seen a picture of her?
I'd seen a picture, but I'd not seen her in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it irritates my sister who reunited us that she looks just like her.
Okay.
I love that. It really irritates her. She doesn't like it when we say it because she hates her.
Oh.
And so I made the excuse of going out with the guest book that you can sign.
Uh-huh.
I made the excuse of going out with the guest book to lay it out in the foyer of the church, knowing she was out there. And I turned and looked at her from across the room, and I said hello and nodded my head. And she said hello and nodded her head. And that was that. And then I went back into the back where everybody was getting ready and cried.
Oh.
And my sister-in-law is Filipino, and her little Filipino mom was back there. And she sees me with tears in my eyes, and she comes over and says, "It's okay, honey. Today I be your mama."
Oh.
Loved it. Thank you. And then my brother saw me and said, "What's wrong?" I said, "She's here. Are you going to be okay?" "No." "No, I'm not." So he said, "You just sit by me. It'll be fine." So I sat right behind him, and she had sworn to my sister that when she came to this wedding, she would sit in the back pew. So she would come in late and leave early so she wouldn't see me.
Right.
Well, she didn't. She sat right in front of me.
She was kind of trying to push her own boundaries.
Oh, very much so. And her common law husband, Ned, knew nothing about me.
Oh, wow.
And I was very careful not to introduce myself to him. Now, I was really trying to respect the situation because I knew she was a hothead and I didn't want her to ruin my niece's wedding.
Exactly. It was ultimately your niece's wedding. Right.
Exactly. And I knew enough about her to know that it wouldn't matter. If she wanted to go off, she was going to go off. So I said nothing. I was very respectful. She sat right in front of me and I thought, how do I get to see her closer? Well, when the bride walks up the aisle, we all turn to look, and now she's behind me. And I'm taller than her. So I turned back and looked at her and said, "Can you see all right?" And she said, "Uh-huh."
Oh, I love it. I love that you engaged with her.
That was it. About a year and a half later, she passed away.
Oh, Seth, all you got was that.
That was all I got. She kept hanging around in the foyer after the wedding. And my sister-in-law kept saying, "Go talk to her. This might be your only chance." And I said, no, I'm going to respect that she does not want that. And I said, I'm not going over there. I don't want her to be upset. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realized, honestly, I didn't go because it was one thing that she didn't want to have a relationship with me after I was reunited. It would be a different thing to have her look me in the eye and say, "Get the hell away from me."
Yeah. You got to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what I did is I asked my brother, "Let's do this. Why don't you take a picture with our mom and at the last minute pull me into the picture?" He's like, "Okay." So that's what we did. She was furious, but we did it.
I love that. That's amazing. Must be an amazing picture.
Yeah, I look strange.
Yes, because you felt strange.
I did. It was just really odd.
Wow.
Then when she was passing away of cancer, she was in Arizona. My brother and sister went down to be with her as she was passing away. And literally on her deathbed, they said, "Please tell us the fathers of these two of our sisters." And she turned and looked away. She wouldn't answer. Yeah. So, but the thing is, I thought I had figured out who it was just because of who my youngest son looked like. And I thought it was somebody from Byron's family.
Okay.
I thought I'd figured it out, and that's the reason she didn't want to say anything.
Right.
And so I let it go.
Okay.
I'd already done 23andMe because I wanted to have the ethnic background verified, and it wasn't correct. I do have some Irish, but not as much as they said.
Yeah. But remember to take it with somewhat of a grain of salt.
Exactly. Then that was 23andMe. And then because of the health things, that was the other reason I did it. I wanted the health background because I wasn't getting that from her. And then I decided in 2016, so many years later, to do Ancestry because someone said, they have a larger pool.
Yep.
And because I thought I'd figured out who my birth father was, I wasn't looking.
Okay.
So I just went ahead and did it. Christmas deal. And when I got on to get my report, it said a report came back. It said I had a first cousin. Well, by this time I had created my entire maternal tree. I can go back to Virginia in the 1600s.
Right.
So I had all of that. And first cousin comes up and I'm looking in the tree and I'm like, he's nowhere there. Uh-oh. I had my laptop in my hand and walked. My husband had the dog outside. I walked to the door and said, "I think I just figured out who my birth father is." Because this cousin had only two uncles. And they were both in the right age.
Yes.
And And when he had messaged me and said, "Oh, I don't recognize your name. Is it a married name? How are we related?"
Mm-hmm.
I, broke all the rules. I said, "Well, first question was, do you have any members of your family who maybe were in the military or something and were living in the Aberdeen area in the late 50s, early 60s?"
Mm-hmm.
I just made it very mushy.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, actually, I grew up there." Oh, well, in that case, there's no other way for me to say this, but I believe that one of your uncles is my birth father.
Yeah. That's not really breaking rules. You actually did that.
It wasn't too bad.
He asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
You didn't lead with, "I'm adopted, please help me." Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I wasn't looking.
Right. Right.
It was just so strange. And he decided to do the ancestry test on a total fluke, just like I did.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of us had some great plans for it. We just decided to do it.
Right. And that's most people's story.
Yeah. So he got a hold of his mother. He said, "Let me ask my mom." And the next day sent me a message and said, "Mom says it is Uncle Harvey. And she wants to know if she can talk to you."
Oh.
I said, "Of course," thinking, I don't know what kind of talk to me she wants to do, but I'm open for it.
Right.
And the most important part of that is you have to remember that absolutely nobody knew about me.
Of course not.
So when she called me at 10:30 that morning as I was walking through my door, she said, "Is this Sandi?" And I said, "Is this my Aunt Lorraine?" She said, "Oh my God, I've been thinking of you all these years."
Oh.
And I said, "Wait a minute, you knew about me?" And she said, "No, about you, honey. I was in the room when you were born."
Oh my God. Chills, more chills. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I quite honestly bent over almost into the fetal position.
I bet
on
you
the
did.
Floor.
I bet you did.
Lovely. She said, "Your father never forgot about you.
Oh.
We talked about you all the time. You were his only child.
Oh, that's incredible.
He would have kept you, but he was in a horrible marriage and he just didn't want to do that.
Sure.
And I've never forgotten about you. But I thought you were a boy."
Hello. There it is again. Wait a minute. She was in the room when you were born?
Right, but they whisked me away and they put a blue band on me. So it was the nuns who were keeping them from knowing my gender.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Literally from the moment you were born.
Literally, I was kept a secret from the moment I was born.
That is nuts.
Mm-hmm. And I remember asking her I flew out to visit with her. Lovely, lovely woman. I just adored her.
Mm-hmm.
Funny. I mean, I remember one of her daughters-in-law, as my aunt was passing, I was there. I remember one of her daughters-in-law saying, "Lorraine taught me how to drink." I love her. Love her. She would tell me these stories of how horribly, horribly abused they were as children and just awful things that happened to them that helped me kind of understand more. My father, Harvey, was an alcoholic and life was just really rough for him.
Yeah.
And I don't relate to that side of the family at all.
Okay.
They're very scarred by what happened in their life.
Sure.
But I loved her. I just adored her. So I did get to see her and we would talk on the phone and we'd laugh. And when I found out, she called me around my birthday in February in 2019 and said she'd found out that she had liver cancer and lung cancer. And I said, "Would you like me to come out and visit now?" And she said, "No, I've decided not to do treatment. I know what this means. I've been with other people. I know what's going to happen. I'm okay with it." And I said, "I'm a realist. I work in medicine. So this is the way it is. And when you want me to come visit, you let me know and I will be there." And then in September, her birthday was September 11th. So in September, I think it was the day after her birthday, I got a call from her daughter, my cousin, saying, "Mom's doing really poorly." So I got tickets for about 2 weeks later and told her, and she said, no, you need to come out now.
Oh.
Called back. The airline was kind enough. I still had to pay more, but they were kind enough to get me on a flight the next morning. And I was able to say goodbye to her. She was with it enough. I said, "Give my dad a hug for me." And I was there holding her hand when she passed away. So I think, she saw me come in and I was there when she went out.
Oh, wow.
And then so once I found out who my birth father was, again, my adopted mom said, "Don't tell your father. He'd be so hurt." I'm like, "No, he wouldn't." He would not. I'm such a daddy's girl. Are you kidding me? There's no way.
Yeah.
So I did tell him when we were all alone once. I said, Mom didn't want me to tell you. He says, why? I don't know. She thought you'd be upset.
So strange.
And in Wanda's case, I did eventually. So when she passed away, my brother called. Actually, my sister called to tell me 5 days after she died that she had passed away because she didn't want anybody to know she died.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. And including her siblings. It's just such a strange, really sad woman.
It is sad.
So I did say to my brother, I want to, did I miss the funeral? He says, no, she's being cremated and we're going to toss her ashes here in Washington, the favorite place that she liked to go hiking. And I said, well, I'm going to come. And he says, well, Ned is going to be here. And I said, right, Randy. No, I just gave away a name. You can bleep that out.
Okay.
I didn't mind that she needed me to be her secret while she was alive, but I am not going to be the family secret anymore. It's done.
Right.
And he said, I agree with you. You're right.
Good.
So when I got out there, I think I was out there about 2 days, and then Ned showed up and walked in the kitchen, and they're not saying who I am. They're not introducing me. I'm sitting at the table talking with these people. And I left to go with my sister and said, this isn't good. Somebody needs to say something. Called my other sister, and she said, no, he's here now. I just told him who you are. Okay. And when I got back to my brother's house, he came walking around and gave me a hug and said, I understand. I have another daughter. He was
sister.
very kind about it. No, it was Ned. It was Wanda's common law husband.
Oh, gotcha.
Because he considered her kids to be his kids.
Oh, right. I apologize. Okay.
Yeah. No, I have another daughter, and I said it's very sweet. And then we talked about weird things like I never understood why people watched game shows. The only one worth watching was Jeopardy. And he said, oh my God, your mother used to say the exact same thing.
I agree with that as well, by the way.
Yeah. Why anything else is too easy. And then, or silly. I'm like, I don't care what the price of potato chips is compared to that car. So then we were talking, and all of a sudden Ned looks at me at one point and says, so you're an interpreter? I said, yeah. Sign language, huh? I said, yeah. That's weird. Why is that weird? Your mom grew up in foster care. Yeah. She had a deaf foster sister. She knew sign language.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
It just keeps happening, doesn't it?
I know. Yeah. And I think there's a sadness in me about that because she missed out on having a relationship with someone who probably would have understood.
More than anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the sister who's so angry when she found out that Wanda died said, I hope that bitch rots in hell.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I said she lived her hell.
Yeah.
She lived it.
Yeah. She's already been there.
So that's kind of my story. The hard part was I love hiking also. And I hiked across Spain twice. The Camino is 500 miles across Spain.
My husband wants to do that.
Oh, I love it so much. I want to go again.
My husband is obsessed with that idea.
I went the first time by myself.
Uh-huh.
The second time, my husband wanted to go, and my brother heard about it, so he wanted to go.
Cool.
And so I took the two of them along. Good idea in theory.
Okay.
But my brother became very dependent because I can speak Spanish. It's not fluent, but I understand it and can speak it.
Uh-huh.
And so it was all on me to take care of every detail and to handle things while he's off having fun. And then I got hurt. I had what I thought was maybe a shin splint or something, and it wasn't getting better. And he didn't care.
Oh.
It was just all about, well, where am I going next? What am I doing next?
Oh.
And it, that rejection thing starts happening.
Yeah.
And I only know this in retrospect. This is in 2018. I was so furious with him. I went into full-scale bitch mode.
Okay.
I was furious. I'm like, I am not your tour director. And got really angry with him. And if it weren't for the fact that the two of us are just all around decent, mature human beings, I don't know that we would have gotten past it.
So how did you get past it?
I was staying on in Europe because we had an exchange student who was getting married in Italy. And so I stayed for a month after they went back. My husband was a teacher. He's retired now, but he was a teacher at the time, so he had to get back. and went and visited friends and family all over Europe because I love to travel. So he left. And then I kept thinking, I'm going to go and talk to him about this because I know it hit my trigger.
Yes.
Yes.
And you're going to fester. It's going to fester.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He pushed that button that made me feel like I wasn't good enough and he was going to dump me. And if that's going to happen,
oh my God,
you're going to get dumped first.
Yes. Yes.
But I didn't know it while I was doing it. So once I realized it, I just wanted to be able to sit down with him in person and talk about it. I didn't want to do it on the phone.
Yeah.
And when my Aunt Lorraine was passing away in 2019, I thought, this is my chance. But again, his wife, who's Filipino, actually grew up in Hawaii. Her family's in Hawaii, and he was in Hawaii at the time.
Uh-huh.
So we couldn't sit down. And then finally, I think it was last year, I called him on the phone. I said, I need to talk to you about this. And he said, absolutely, we have to talk about this. So I went out this year for my niece's baby shower. And we sat down and talked about it. He doesn't understand. He said, I can't understand what it's like to be adopted, but you don't understand either. We were raised by our grandparents. We didn't have either of our parents around. So I didn't have this. I said, but you had your culture. You had your family culture. And you knew where you belonged and you knew who your parents were. And I was afraid of being dumped again. He just couldn't understand it. Yeah. He couldn't understand it. He's not angry. We've gotten past that.
Well, Sandi, thank you so much for talking to me and telling this amazing circuitous story. Thank you. Please keep in touch with us, and I'll look at your DNA sometime.
All right. And on that note, it's time for us to get out of here.
Then I am Richard Castle, and even if not then, I am Richard Castle. Regardless, I'm always Richard Castle. You can go to my website, richardcastle.com. You can follow me on the Twitter or on Instagram @CastleSongs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I wanted to remind you guys, if you would like to join the Patreon, we forgot to talk about it earlier.
Oh, yes.
We now have bonus episodes up there. So we are a twice monthly free podcast. We are doing free episodes on the off weeks on the Patreon platform for just patrons. And we have 2-3 up there, I think, so far. And we're getting some really good feedback. And there's some information that is a little different than the stuff that we usually talk about here.
Yeah.
And people seem to be enjoying it. So come on in, the water's fine. And also, you can find me at cutoffjeans.com. If you would like help with your case or to tell your story on the show or ask questions, please reach me there or any of the socials. Join the Facebook group, Cutoff Jeans Podcast. And there's one more thing to say.
And what is that, Julie?
The truth is in your jeans.